This is TS501 Unit 1 Coursework Task 3, Strindberg and the Paradox of Staging Naturalism. Strindberg's ideas about staging naturalism. Strindberg wasn't just a playwright, he was consciously and proactively instigating and pioneering changes in theatre in direct response to the visual and superficial effects used in the years before and also at that very time. He was innovating a new kind of theatre and even advocating a new kind of theatre goer. One more interested in the psychology of a piece of drama rather than one content with merely observing the action and grandiose theatricals of the time. In his preface to Miss Julie, Strindberg breaks down how productions can be created with a more naturalistic feel. Towards the end of the piece of writing, he focuses on the precise practices that he advocates to work towards a more cerebral and naturalistic theatre experience. Through this presentation, I'm going to examine his thoughts on scenery, dialogue, intervals, mime, ballet music, lighting, makeup, and acting style. And I'm going to try to understand the paradox of how the naturalism movement can exist within an art form that is inherently meta-theatrical and the compromises that Strindberg allowed in order not to stretch the tolerance of his audience too far. First of all, looking at the scenery, no doors. A strange compromise. There's an oscillation between naturalism and what can practically be achieved in a theatrical setting. The style of the set was to move away from painted backdrops and have real kitchen utensils, pots and pans and the like hanging from the walls, and even real furniture borrowed from Strindberg's collection. However, doors were illuminated from the set design, as Strindberg notes that they can cause the whole set to sway. Looking at this quote on the right-hand side, it says, "Doors can be avoided, particularly since stage doors are made of canvas and sway at the slightest touch. They don't even permit an angry father to express his anger after a bad dinner by going out and slamming the door behind him so that the whole house shakes. In the theatre, it sways." On a personal note, I have to say that if I had an angry father or husband that slammed doors because of a bad dinner, I'd be asking him why he didn't get a takeaway. But that's just a side note that popped into my head. Moving on, let's talk about dialogue. Strindberg realized that someone talking out aloud to themselves would seem unnatural on stage, but he managed to justify the idea of a monologue through the lens of naturalism by giving various examples of when someone would talk aloud, such as when talking to a pet or an actor learning lines. The dialogue was constructed in such a way that instead of lines being like a ping-pong ball type of exchange between characters with a climatic witty one-liner, they were based more on the natural twists and turns of everyday conversations and reveal the inner motivations and thoughts of the characters. Looking at this quote from the preface to Miss Julie, it says, "Finally, I have somewhat broken with tradition where the dialogue is concerned by not making any characters catechists who sit around asking stupid questions in order to elicit a witty reply." And he goes on to say that he avoided the symmetrical, mathematical artificiality of French dialogue and allowed my characters' brains to work irregularly as they do in real life. Innovative for its time also is the complete absence of dialogue through mime. Although it was a popular form of entertainment, it was not usual for a character in a play based on speech to potter around the stage in silence, as the cook does in Miss Julie. Mime, ballet, music. Now, justified through naturalism as they may be, they were used as devices to contract time, which is very much something from the Romantic period. They also are used to fulfill audience expectations and to provide a rest for the actor and the audience, because Strindberg wanted his 90-minute production to be played all the way through in one act with no intervals. Kristin the cook moves about the stage in pure silence, just doing the usual business a cook would do. She can turn her back to the audience and disregard them in this naturalistic style. However, this device is used to make the passing of the hour seem believable. And very importantly, the use of not only mime, but ballet and music shows how aware Strindberg was of the audience's expectations of the time. They'd be used to seeing several productions in several performance styles over a long evening with intervals. The music is justified as a naturalistic addition to the play, as being part of what the characters would have heard as a midsummer celebration takes place, yet it also indicates the passing of time. And in a commercial sense, it was what the audience needed. Strindberg realized he could only push the barriers of innovation so far. The ballet, although incorporated into the play as a natural part of action on stage as the celebrations spill over into the kitchen area, is also needed to fulfill the expectations of the audience, as well as, again, being used as a device to indicate the passing of time and give the audience a break from the dialogue. I'm looking at the quotes on the left-hand side. It says, be disturbed. Oh, yes, the kind of suspension of belief would be disturbed by intermissions during which the spectator has time to reflect and thereby escape from the suggestive influence of the writer hypnotist. My play probably lasts about an hour and a half. And there's also another quote at the end, but it's a bit blurry, so I won't read that. Moving on. Lights, makeup, acting. Looking at the lights, in Strindberg's time, strong footlights would be the norm, and light the actors' faces from beneath, making them look fat, he observes, and obliterating the expression in their eyes. He wanted a more naturalistic feel to the lighting, so that the actors' expressions could be read instead of relying on huge gestures. There is dichotomy in his idea that the auditorium should be plunged into darkness to help the audience concentrate on the stage, which is not in keeping with naturalism as an extension of real life, and is very much an artificial theatrical device. Makeup. He advocated hardly any makeup or being fresh-faced, and this was to ensure the psychological emotions could be read by the audience on the face. Again, this step towards naturalism is a compromise, as strong stage lights do tend to wash out the features, and makeup does tend to be needed. But in his justification, Strindberg mentions that it's important not to inflict the same facial expression all the way through with makeup. He refers to a soot line on the face to indicate a frown or frustration, and it would be hard to produce an expression like a smile with that drawn onto the face. Strindberg's ideas about lighting and makeup also link in with his view that the acting style needed to depend less on large gestures to communicate across a large auditorium, but be in a smaller, more intimate space where the audience could observe facial expressions and even the emotions in the eyes. So toning it down in this way meant that the actors could be moving in a way more in keeping with how people would be expected to move in real life. The anomaly is it's still on a stage, and Strindberg wanted the auditorium in darkness. So again, the stage would be the focus, and there is that struggle between depicting something based on naturalism and yet something that holds the audience's attention and entertains or intrigues them. So pure naturalism isn't going to completely hold their attention. The references are listed here for you, and my reflection on this task is this. The close reading and assimilation of ideas involved in this task helped me to understand the great insight Strindberg had into the audience of his day and how careful he was to keep his production commercially viable while still being able to push at the boundaries of his time. Also, studying the changes he was advocating allowed me to understand more about theatre before naturalism. Thank you for listening.